many workshops and being her thesis director. The poet is Roxanne Powell. Her collection is called Thinking Through the Happily Ever Afters. She is interested in exploring a feminist view of familiar fairy tales and Disney stories based on female figures who are cast as heroes, but not always understood in perhaps the way Roxanne's poems want us to understand them. She'll tell you more and read a sample. Please welcome Roxanne Powell.
Like some of my fellow peeps, I am also interested in saving trees, but apparently my technology doesn't love me. So while that is figuring itself out, I will tell you guys a bit about my my poetry collection, Thinking Through the Happily Ever Afters. I've always been interested in the women within Disney stories, and then kind of working backwards from that, moving on to the Grimm brothers, and then going even backwards from that point, because a lot of what the Grimm brothers did is they went around and heard a lot of stories and read a lot of stories from different areas around the world, and they just started compiling all these stories. Man, those are interesting. And then, moving on to Hans Christian Andersen, and then Neil Gaiman, his work, The Sleeper and the Spindle, is a modern retelling of kind of Snow White and Sleeping Beauty combined, and trying to figure out, how those women could take on their own agency and kind of figure out their world for themselves. So, Thinking Through the Happily Ever Afters is a series of poems about love told from the contemporary perspective of female characters who populate fairy tales. Barbeau de Villeneuve's 18th century Beauty and the Beast, the Brothers Grimm's compilations of classic fairy tales, Neil Gaiman's The Sleeper and the Spindle, modern retelling of our traditional understanding of Sleeping Beauty. These poems find inspiration from the characters who have either been overshadowed or betrayed by their male counterparts, or seek something different for themselves. They've gone through their own tales and they're thinking, I don't think I really like where I ended up. I'm going to change that. Thank you. So through these poems, I try to figure out why characters Ariel, Jasmine, Aurora, Rapunzel, all these different females fall in love, stay in love, or decide to leave their partners. So this project explores the emotions behind each woman's experience with love. In each case, she finds her independent voice, which she is generally denied in her traditional tale, because patriarchy. So without further ado, I'm going to read about 4 different poems from my collection from different areas within the collection. The first one is called O Mother, from the perspective of Belle, the inventor's daughter. Last night I heard you call to me, great mother, though no one else can say they have heard your voice. I keep my ear to the mountain that stands tall at the backs of most men. Dear mother, I heard you falter when you whispered in my ear the secret of escape, how to run away with none the wiser and my hair unbound, a symbol of my commitment to this provincial life. How to protect myself from becoming like them, even though I am the youngest of 6 siblings. My sisters complaining about their hair and their makeup, while my brothers stand to inherit a fortune lost to the lifestyle of an angry man who, for all intents and purposes, claimed to love his wife. I am the youngest with a love for towns and villages and people who only exist within the pages of borrowed stories, and dared to heed your call, O mother, when you told me that life can be better than the stories I have dreamed with my eyes. O mother, I hear you running in the creek that marks the boundary between my father's lands and freedom, beckoning with the promises that my sisters would not dare, richness in the soil and vegetables as plentiful as tears, trees as thick as shop awnings that allow just enough rainwater, and spaces enough to see what I have been missing. In the silence of the morning, as the saddle slides easily onto the back of the only horse we have left to our name, I can hear my father snoring. He exhales the name of my mother, and sadness pricks the corners of my skin. I remember how I unlatched the door and a spider crawled onto the exposed flesh of my wrist. You are here in the dark with me, mother, in the spider as it crawls along my skin. Is it a test? Have I been found wanting? The door is heavier than I remember, and the horse is more stubborn. You are here in the wind, pushing branches to the ground. They snap underneath hooves and boots as I walk deeper into the woods. You are in the hares who skitter out and off the path. Do not tread on us. We are travelers like you. I hear you in the creaking of the old door I forgot to close all the way on the lands I will never return to. It laments my parting, even as I know you are only testing my resolve. In the years after my father lost his fortune, I was given many names I do not want anymore. I hear you in the trickle of the water that marks the middle of the wood like a gash across flesh, the one that stands on the edge of something exciting. I see you in the shadow of something monstrous, a creature that has stopped just outside of the trees, the horns atop its head reaching to branches that cradle the moon and the stars, and its head turns as it catches my scent. But it cannot cross the water, and I cannot turn back. I see you in its claws, extending toward me, almost human, beckoning me forward, and I know you are testing me, wondering if I have the nerve to take the life I deserve, with claws and teeth and grit. This next poem is called Carpet, and it is told from the perspective of Jasmine, the Sultan's daughter, who, interestingly enough, was not given a name in the original story. So Jasmine was not given a name in the original story of Aladdin or the Blue Lamp, as it is known within the Brothers Grimm. She was given a name after Disney took the story over and decided that, hey, maybe we should give her a name. That would be cool. So, but this poem is told through her voice, but about a different character. So, Carpet. Our time is often oxidized, dried up with the magic carpet rides over foreign lands. The edges of this rug are splayed gold and soft to the touch. It is, you say, not as soft as my cheek in the moonlight over Cairo. Poor carpet, even your weave belies your purpose, forced to ferry two lovers across nations in search of happiness while you get none. When people look at you and do not see a soul or something worthy of attention, if only they would look beyond your ability to climb drafts and outrun shooting stars. Carpet does not do you justice. You are warm to the touch and look good with the decor, yes, but you are also wrinkled like the corners of my grandmother's eyes. When you are rolled, I can see my father smiling, before his duties to the throne made him sad. When you are stretched out in front of the fire, you are the touch of my grandfather. How could they have missed the way your colors stand out from other carpets in the marketplace? You are neither animal nor vegetable. You cannot be eaten except by the weaver's loom. Without you, this whole new world, this prince of words, boasts, would not exist. Without you, this night would cease to be. Are there any more tricks tucked into your lining? The world you have given me is the world you dream about when the eyed and limbed go to sleep, and you are left by the dying coals. This next poem is called A Shared Dream, which is a combination poem inspired by the words to Once Upon a Dream from Disney's Sleeping Beauty and Pablo Neruda poem. Of this, I am certain. Once I had a dream many nights ago. I saw you at the edge of the wood I have walked trenches in since childhood. Your silhouette waiting at the edges, torn, hoping for the broken edges of mine. But if I know you, beloved you, loved me before even we met, our shadows following our hearts in the dead of night, and just before the sunrise we whispered to meet. But if little by little your dreams fade with the birth of day, then I will forget. If your heart that whispers in the shadows does not reach for mine in the sun, then I cannot help you, beloved. You are lost to me. Once upon a dream was so wonderful, the chase is over. But if by some chance you, beloved, you remember the promises we whispered in the shadows, then know that I have sung them 1,000 times before, and since, and still, and will, as long as you will have me by your side. The way it was once upon our shared dream. This last poem, to end on a lighter, more fun note, is called Frumpy Sister Queen, and this poem is inspired by the Disney villainess Ursula. As many of you might know, or some of you may not know, Ursula in some stories is the sister of King Triton, who is the father of the Little Mermaid Ariel, so that knowing that makes her connection and her, influence on the story of the Little Mermaid just a little bit more interesting. But this is told from the perspective of Ursula after she has been banished to the cave at the edge of the sea. It is murky and dank and frigid in this neck of the woods, and by woods I mean ocean. Who had the bright idea to make a cave out in the middle of nowhere's Pacific? But at least I do not have to deal with the neighbors and crazy teenage parties that are so frequent back at the palace. Colorful fins, kelp necklaces, and a full band hosted by a hermit crab who recycles his previous shells into instruments, to the enthusiasm of the crowd and my chagrin. The music vibrates through the very walls of the palace and makes breathing a chore. Too many notes vying for dominance in my gills, the blood vessels struggling to filter oxygen, water, and the latest shell shocker they picked for the top 40. You would think they do nothing but party while I stayed inside trying to make sense of the eel scratch that was the Treasury Charter. My first mistake was trying to speak to my brother on the dance floor. This was back when he was still a bachelor, entertaining every girl with fins while I had to take lessons on politics and financing. It sucks to be the responsible sibling. He refused to acknowledge my presence, leaving me to suffer under the patronizing gaze of his latest conquest. Silky hair, slender fins, and the voice of a natural siren. My second mistake was trying to bond with him over maps of the Great Atlantic War. It is too much to ask for a few minutes alone with my little brother without him finding some excuse or mertramp to distract him. We used to get lost in the kelp forests in the summer water and take wild rides on the backs of humpback whales to the edges of ice caps in winter. Now all he wants to do is throw parties with enough willing participants to keep him occupied for days. Whenever my memories become too strong, I hide myself away in the library, somewhere he would never think to look for me now, unless I was one of his more recent conquests. My last mistake was asking him to step up and take responsibility after our parents died. I had not been crowned for a week before he rallied the people against my choices. He never could understand why I always wanted a noise curfew. It gives me a few minutes of quiet. But life is a popularity contest, and I was the frumpy sister queen who would rather read to the sea urchin orphans than throw a party. He grew out of this mindset fairly early, ditching me in the process. He took my birthright and cast me out of the palace by my tentacles, refused to let me back in, banished me to the outer reaches of the ocean. My best decision was stealing his partygoers in my cave. Now they have to sit and listen, unmoving, as I read them the histories of the ocean and how the sea urchin is doomed to repeat the mistakes of our leaders. Last I heard, he had married some girl and had 7 kids with the voices of natural silence. Thank you.